to say, like, well, look, I'm putting myself above someone that I don't like Nick Shirley, and that I'm just calling balls and strikes, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. This is a pretty big whoopsie, and you to just write it off as, oh, put me in handcuffs. No one's suggesting that. You're being incredulous because you know you're wrong here. I saw you immediately put out about the Nick Shirley story, that the Quality Leering Senator, it had closed. Are you ready to retract that?
So at the time he showed up, it was closed. So that's,
no. You said that it was like defunct, not that it was closed for the day.
No, it was closed for the prior week. The owner came out and did a press conference. And the prior week when he showed up, yes, it was closed when he showed up, but it was also closed prior week for violations, and they were on probation.
But it's clear, it was absolutely clear that the implication of what you were saying and the people you were getting it from was, oh my goodness, of course this place isn't even operating, it's defunct. And that wasn't the case.
No, I never
said it was still in operation.
Operating. Yeah, I never said it wasn't operating. I said at the time it was closed, and for the prior week it was closed, and everything I said was factually accurate. 3 of the places that he went to, there were 10 places total. 3 of the places that he went to was closed, but the real issue here is fraud, right? So if there's fraud, then I'm all open to it. Go ahead and investigate fraud. To my understanding, there have been regulators and people that have already been to those places that to this point they said they haven't seen anything out of the ordinary or anything that would be fraud. Now, as far as Shirley goes, because you asked me about Shirley, yeah, I mean, I debated him and I had conversations with him in Phoenix a few weeks ago. I think he's another piece of shit. I think anybody that goes, and I'm being serious, anybody that goes to a war zone and goes to a country to try to undermine a bunch of innocent people that have been murdered, which is exactly satire, you're a piece of shit. I have zero respect for him, and I think his mother, who I also ran into in Phoenix, is also a piece of shit. You got me going now because I didn't want to.
Where's his mom? Now you're coming. What did he say? What did he say about Ukraine specifically?
So if you look it up, Rob, and you got me going because to be honest with you, I did not want to call in to get into politics with you. I was trying to be nice, but if you want to talk,
it's fine. We can move on. No problem.
It's fine. I'll answer. It's all good. So far, you're being okay. You're being cool, so I'll answer it. So if you look up some of the videos he did when he went over to the Ukraine, he did a satire video, and he did a podcast where somebody from Ukraine was asking him about it because it got millions of views, and the podcaster from Ukraine said, you did a lot of damage. What he did is he went to a very upper class part of Ukraine, and he videotaped, and you could just go on YouTube and look at this. He videotaped a bunch of very expensive cars, and he was making these faces, and he was kind of undermining what was going on in Ukraine, making it sound like all of our tax dollars that are going over there are for people that could live lavish lifestyles, which obviously is not true. So he admitted it.
No.
He admitted it.
Now, there was certainly a lot of fraud. It's even been admitted at the New York Times, right? That wrote a story saying that Zelensky took away, like, guardrails, and that a lot of the money that was sent over there was fraud.
But that's not what he admitted to, and he admitted that it was satire humor. Now,
well, that may be the case. I can't confirm or deny. So, let's say I accepted it at face value. That's fine. But what I am saying, outside the scope of that, like there was fraud there. You acknowledge that?
Okay, there's fraud everywhere, all over the world. He also paid a bunch of Hispanic men to hold up Biden signs in front of the White House as a spectacle. He's admitted to that. And by the way, as far as the Ukraine videos he put out there, he admitted that it was satire humor, and I think it's extremely inappropriate when you look at all the people that have been murdered in Russia and in Ukraine. It's a horrible tragedy, and I wish the war would be over with. A lot of innocent people have lost their lives. That's not a journalist. He's not a journalist. No, I think he's a grifter, and I think you could prove it by a number of...
I just asked. I think that the Ukraine stuff. I think that my position on this was to stop funding and like Lindsey Graham's sort of idea of look how many Russians are dying because we're funding this. I don't want to see Ukrainian men sent to a meat grinder just so we could feel good about Russians dying that I don't particularly want to see die either. So I'm sure we have a difference of opinion. But I want to get back I'll give you the final word, and then I want to get back to this Somali situation.
Yeah. The point that I was just trying to make is I don't think you would do that. I certainly would not do that. I wouldn't go to an area or a country that's in a war and make satire videos to make money on YouTube. And then when he admitted it, and he admitted that he probably caused some damage. By the way, there's a podcast where you could look this up where he admits that the video he put out probably caused some bad things and it was hurtful. And then he was asked, will you take the video down? And he said no. This is a young man who's more interested in clicks and money than doing the right thing, and I don't have any respect for him. And by the way, when I debated him, I put the videos up on my YouTube. He's not capable of even having a conversation about the issues.
So he wouldn't even admit when he was wrong? He wouldn't even admit that?
No, he admitted it was satire. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not making this up. I played it on my show. It's fair. It's a podcast.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I just can't say you're right either. That's all I'm saying. But fair enough.
Okay. Well, all you got to do is go up there and it's a podcast that he did. I have zero respect for him, and I've been very consistent on this. I said this everywhere this week. If people are committing fraud, then I have no problem with them being investigated. And if they are, let the chips fall where they may and let them get their day in court. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is somebody that is grifting off of this who cares more about getting clicks than actually doing the right thing.
Okay, but I think that the fact that we have a mainstream media that was so uninterested in this, and then it took someone going viral that actually went there and pointed out stuff, and may I point out, I think that we would both acknowledge we've both been wrong about things in the past, but I feel like you've misled us here. I don't know if you could see, here's your post. You said, Quality Learning Center is permanently closed, you fucking idiots. But it seemed that, when I asked, let me finish. It seemed like when I asked you, you said, no, I just said it was closed the week before. But no, I said it seemed that you were implying that it was permanently shut down. You said, no, that's not what I'm saying. But that is what you said.
I did hours about this on the radio. If you're talking about what I said or you're talking about a specific tweet. So it was closed for a week. And when Nick Shirley went over there, the insinuation that he was making, and the point that I was trying to make is that he made the insinuation that, oh my God, there's no kids in there. Look, it's locked. There's nothing going on in there. And the point that I think is important is that, number one, he didn't go there during normal business hours. That's already been established. He went there at around 11 a.m. The normal business hours of that place are 2 to 10. That's problem number one. There was a sign right on the front of the door that said 2 to 10 p.m. Number two, according to the owner, they were closed for about a week or two. They've been on probation. It had nothing to do with fraud. It had everything to do with multiple violations they had with child safety concerns. And yeah, that's the whole story in a nutshell.
Now wait. So, no, I'm not. Now it's a clever sleight of hand, but of course, like it's someone like me in your line of work where we're talking a lot online, we could say things that we adjust, like new information comes out, that's all fine. But when I ask you the things you said, it's clear I'm using the term said not as if just verbal communication. You were incorrect. And what you suggested here, that it was permanently closed. And I think for the interest of truth and transparency, you should say, yeah, I was incorrect when I put this post out. Because it seemed before I brought this post up, you were leading this audience to believe, no, I never suggested it was permanently closed.
Well, first of all, let me be clear. I'm not trying to lead your audience into anything because I think your audience is extremely brainwashed. So the last thing I would ever try to do is lead your audience into anything. And I don't think your audience listens to my show anyway, which I'm totally fine with. So let's
they're listening to you here. They're listening to you here.
Let's just be factually accurate. Well, you're the one who brought up a tweet that I guess you had a problem with.
Well, it's not that I had a problem. I'm literally asking what I thought I had read. And I thought it was interesting because I saw this post come up and I saw a litany of other people. Like, what day was this? The 29th, the 30th? Like, it was like everyone came out at the same time from the left and was like, oh, this place is closed. And I believe the Minnesota Star Tribune and let me finish, and someone from the government, I believe they said this place is closed as if it was permanently closed. And then they got egg on their face because all of a sudden someone who was like a partial owner came out the next day and was like, no, we're open. We're here. They just came on the hours that we were shut down, and that's contradictory statements. And so I wondered if you were going to correct the record on you being inaccurate here. That's all.
That's not what the owner said. Are you going to correct the record? He didn't say we're open. That's not what he said. What he said is they had been closed, and that they were on probation, and Nick Shirley came during not normal business hours when they're not open, and that since then, I think a part of it is probably due to all the scrutiny on this place, that they have since reopened. But they were on probation and they were closed. Now, they might have changed their, whatever terminology, they might have changed. Their license was never revoked. They always had their license, but they were on probation. They were closed. They were closed when I tweeted about it. They were closed when Nick Shirley went there.
But they weren't permanently. They weren't permanently closed. And that's what you put out.
Closed. And
but they weren't permanently. They weren't permanently closed.
You have an issue with, so you think the word permanently should have been temporarily closed? Is that what you're saying?
Why did you put the word permanently in all caps if that wasn't important?
Okay. So let's just say that the word permanently, looking back on the fact that they're open now, should have said temporarily closed. Does that make you feel better?
Well, no. Let me explain why. Because it is clear, like if we're not going to pretend. Listen, if we're not going to like pretend to be sort of ignorant of this and not understand, the reason that you put permanently in all caps is because the implication that was being told was like, this is basically an empty building that no one operates in. This place has been shut down. It's not reopening. And so it's laughable that you would go to a place that, please let me finish. If that's a different narrative then, well, they happen to be shut down for a week. And it happened to be hours that they're not open. That's a different narrative because, for example, there are parts in this video, and you may take umbrage with this, the gentleman who claims he lives right there, it says, I've never seen a kid there. Well, if you're like, well, of course not, the place is permanently closed, that's different than saying it happened to be shut down for a week. That's different. Yeah. That you chose the word permanently and to put it in all caps. Why did you think it was necessary to have that be the only word you put in all caps if being permanently closed wasn't important to the message you were putting out there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you better call the ex-police. I guess they better put handcuffs on me. You're right, Rob. I mean, I guess I should have said temporarily closed instead of permanently closed. In the interest of,
all I'm saying is someone, listen, all I'm saying is someone who's like, listen, you acknowledge all of us make mistakes, yourself, myself, right? We all acknowledge that, right? If you're going to say like, well, look, I'm putting myself above someone that I don't like Nick Shirley, and that I'm just calling balls and strikes, and I'll admit when I'm wrong, this is a pretty big whoopsie, and you to just write it off as, put me in handcuffs. No one's suggesting that. You're being incredulous because you know you're wrong here.
Well, first of all, Rob, I find it interesting that instead of talking about the bigger issue, which is alleged fraud, and what is going on in Minnesota, you're taking umbrage to a word where I said permanently instead of temporary. Now, if you'd like to continue the dialogue, I think it could probably be a little bit more productive than a word that you didn't like in a tweet. But like I said, I mean, if you want to contact Elon Musk and Brian said temporary, I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not selling sweatshirts with Learning Center on it. I'm not telling people that all these places are committing fraud when it turns out that is not the case. I'm not telling people that it's all on Tim Walz and Democrats when it was the former Republican governor who privatized these places, and then they didn't have money for the government to oversee these businesses. Okay, I'm not blaming it all on the left and Democrats, and I'm not going into a Somalian restaurant, which is, by the way, he did. He went to the back of a building and the back of a place that's actually now a Somalian restaurant. Several of these places are closed down, and he made
wait, just real quick. Like, I have something to say about all this, but the place that was the back of a Somalian restaurant, is that the viral one that we see in the picture here that said Leering Center? Is that what you're talking about?
No, he went to 10 different places that day.
I know that, but the one that was the back of the restaurant isn't this one. That's a different one?
No, I'm trying to give you the big picture of all the places that he went to. And if somebody could show me actual fraud that he uncovered, then that's one thing. But
Brian, like, I'm trying to have a conversation. You're right. He went to a bunch of individual places, and it would be, if we're interested in sort of getting to the truth of it, for example, even if 9 of these places are engaged in fraud, if you lump in a 10th place that's not engaged in fraud, that's not good. We both agree with that, right?
If there's any fraud, like I've said, and I said it on Cuomo the other day, like I've said a number of times, fraud is fraud. but I want consistency.
But that's fair enough. So, but the point I'm making then, when I'm merely asking you for the sake of clarity, because I don't know everything you're talking about, when you say he went to a place that was the back of a restaurant, are you talking about the one that went most viral? Is that the one that said quality
whole video?
No. But Brian, you understand? For like, it seems that you've spent a lot of time looking at this. I really believe you have. I'm just asking for the specific because I'm willing to hear evidence. I am. So when you say
I'm telling you, he went to 10 different places.
I get that.
There's one place that you're talking about, which is the Learning Center, where they misspelled the word learning.
Is that the one that was the back of a restaurant? That's what I'm asking.
No, I never said that. I never said that.
That's it. There's no gotcha. That's all I was asking. Because I was like, well, that's I'm totally got it. So there was another place that was the back of a restaurant.
Yeah, correct. Then he went to a couple other places that were actually closed, one of which was closed for months, actually.
Now, if I could respond to sort of what you said, Brian, you tend to do this a lot, which is we are specifically talking about one thing here, and this one thing was sort of the fact that. Well, that's fine, but I get a chance to speak as well, right? And that's what I was talking about, this one thing that I thought you got wrong in this story. And what you do is you're like, yeah, but you know what I didn't do? I didn't blame Democrats when it's Republicans, and I didn't do this, and I didn't. All of that's sort of irrelevant to what I was. You sort of deflected and went off to a bunch of other issues to sort of deflect from the fact that you were wrong.
Yeah. So Rob, the word. What was the word I used? I'm trying to remember.
Permanently.
Permanently should have been temporarily closed. But the bigger issue, and by the way, I've said that multiple times now, the bigger issue is the fact, do you take umbrage to any of Nick Shirley's mistakes that he made? Have you talked about that?
Well, I'm sorry, you cut out just a little there at the end. I'm sorry, the last 5 seconds.
Did you take any issues to any of the mistakes that Nick Shirley made?
Well, yes and no. Let me explain why. I'm not sure what the mistakes are. For example, a lot of the debunking has just been people showed up later with kids and said things like, we're only open from 2 to 10. So, for example, the Quality Learning Center place, like, my understanding is they claim that they're only open from 2 to 10, but now there's counter evidence that I need to look into when I get more time that suggests that their business license only allows them to operate until 7 p.m. Now, if that's true, then they're admitting that they're operating outside the scope of their license. And we see all sorts of other stories that claim to be debunked, like CBS debunks by just calling the place and basically saying, do you guys have people there and you engaged in fraud? And they say, no, we're legitimate. And they're like, aha, debunked. This story, I don't think he was saying, he did say that this was fraud in the sense that he had this little total. But I think the spirit of what he was saying is like, when you are getting millions of dollars because on paper it says you're taking care of 70 people and we don't see one, and the debunking is that they showed up a couple days later and said, well, that's because we open from 2 to 10 and look, here's 2 to 3 kids. That's still fraud if it's only 2 to 3 kids.
So what fraud has been proven that he uncovered?
How would you want to prove it? Who tried to prove or disprove it?
Well, just tell me, like, what in that 42-minute video where you say to yourself, oh, that's definitely fraud, they're breaking the law?
There's two
What did he uncover?
There's two things. Well, 3 things to say about this. One, we already know that there's significant fraud in these areas anyways, right? So it's not beyond belief to say, look, it extended even further. But you're right, that's not proof. Secondly, right, he just showed, like, look, the amount of money these places are getting are staggering, and this doesn't look like any kids at all are here. And it looks the exact opposite of what you would think of a public business that is receiving millions upon millions of dollars of tax dollars. There's no one even here that knows. So the circumstantial evidence suggests very strongly that there's a form of fraud going on. And lastly, let me finish. And lastly, even if it doesn't rise to the level of criminality, I think that Americans are rightfully outraged that people that come from a foreign country that could barely speak the language in many of these cases are be giving subsidies of millions upon millions of dollars, while people of all colors in these communities are struggling to get by.
Yeah, so first of all, if you presented that in front of a judge would laugh at you. That's not evidence.
I didn't say that third part was fraud.
Number 2, okay, so you haven't provided any real evidence that you could present in a court of law. That's number 1. Number 2, you're talking about Somalians. The biggest fraud case when it comes to this stuff or the ringleader was actually an American white woman. It had nothing
Correct.
to do with, and I would also say number three, and I ask this to people who are MAGA because I want consistency. I talk about consistency all the time. If there's fraud going on in any of these learning centers, then absolutely hold them to the highest extent of the law. But Donald Trump pardoned 20 people, billions of dollars in fraud. But apparently, if you donate to the Donald Trump campaign, it's totally okay. Fraud is just fine. You can look this up.
I'm aware. I'm aware of what you're doing.
Wrong?
Obviously, the cases were different. For example, the one person that was pardoned spent 4 years in prison, had to pay back millions of dollars in restitution, then was being prosecuted for another crime that prosecutors gave a plea deal to. That's different than just what we see. If you're really, listen, real quick, if you're really not interested in doing this in a partisan way and you care if Democrats are involved in fraud, have you covered the Feeding Our Future people that were at the meeting with Keith Ellison that we have audio where Ellison's admitting, yes, they're looking into you too much. Tim Walz agrees. Do you think that's fraudulent?
I do actually, and I called that out on the radio, but
Excellent.
I'll give you an example of a friend of mine, and I've had personal conversations with him. He is a friend of mine. His name is George Santos, and I've had plenty of private conversations with George Santos. There are literally over 20 people like George Santos that Donald Trump has pardoned. George Santos doesn't have to pay back restitution. He did steal $360,000. He doesn't have to pay it back. It's one thing if you commute a sentence. It's another thing if they don't have to pay back restitution. That is awful. And that should be just as much called out.
Listen, the whataboutism, I have no problem criticizing the pardons of Donald Trump. I've done it many times. Some of them are fucking absurd. Unfortunately, that's also been the case for every other president, but it doesn't excuse Donald Trump. And I think this pardon system is fucking ridiculous. It is what it is. It's terrible. But to use that as a deflection from the obvious fact that we're importing people that are not of our culture, that are a net drain, not only even without this fraud, as we see how many are on welfare, don't speak the language, aren't assimilating, etc., but then to see the staggering amounts of fraud. Just what's being estimated over $9 billion, and now they're saying that it's going to be more significant than that, is staggering and could be the biggest case of prosecuted fraud in the history of this country. And instead, what I'm hearing from you is like, yeah, it's bad that they were involved with Ellison and maybe Tim Walz, but yeah, what about this guy that Trump pardoned? And to me, it seems like, despite your prostrations, that's like, oh, yeah, I would be willing to hear this stuff. It seems that your reflexive attitude, which surprises me as someone who's nonpartisan like you, is to be like, yeah, but Trump. That's what it seems like.
So I couldn't be more clear, and I think I've said this like 5 or 6 times. If there's fraud, I want people held to the highest extent of the law. But what I keep saying over and over again, it's not whataboutism. We are talking about fraud. Fraud is fraud, but in the Trump administration, right now he's the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. If you donate money to his campaign, there are billions of dollars. Over 20 pardons with people that don't have to pay back restitution.
Is that a crime? Is what Trump did a crime?
I never said it was a crime.
Okay, great. Then why do we care? And I'll repeat your line. I'll repeat your line you did to me. If you brought this evidence to a judge, they would laugh at you. Okay?
Well, I know I never claimed it was a crime, so I don't know what you're claiming that these Somalians. You're claiming that somehow Nick Shirley found fraud, and what I'm arguing with you is, if there's fraud in someone that has been convicted, in this case over 20 people that have stolen billions of dollars, Trump pardoned those people and they don't have to pay back restitution. If you can find enough evidence to prosecute Somalians or whoever they are in Minnesota, then go ahead and prosecute them. And guess what? I don't think they deserve a pardon. I don't think anybody deserves a pardon.
That's great, but it is evident. It is evident. Listen, I'm just saying, you can admit it. You can admit that, like, look, you hate Trump more, and you're deflecting to Trump. That's clearly what's happening. I know that listen, let me finish. I know. Please, Brian, I'll give you a chance to speak. That's the way it works here in radio. You know this, right? Right? Like, we can't both speak at the same time. It's evident that what's going on is you're saying, no. I'm saying if there was fraud, then yes, of course they go to jail. But Trump. Yes, you're saying the right words, but it's clear based on the energy and the amount of time that you're putting into this stuff and the deflections that you're making for this story, that it's not, that your words are belying the actual truth. And it's shown by your actions, which are more important than your words. For example, if you truly believe, as you said here, that Ellison and Walz are involved in fraud, fraud, that's by magnitudes larger of a story than Donald Trump legally pardoning someone.
Okay, so if that could be proven in a court of law, then go ahead and present the case, and let's see where the chips fall where they may. What I'm making is very general terms in which we're talking about Nick Shirley now and the 10 places that he went to. There hasn't been any evidence. In fact, there have been controllers and legislatures that have gone to every single place that Nick Shirley went to, and they've already gone in there and they've investigated the last couple of days, and thus far they've said they haven't found anything that rises to the level of fraud, that everything is as usual.
I'm sorry, please finish. I'm sorry.
I was just saying that's what they said. Now, if that changes and there's some fraud that is exposed, I have no problem with it. The problem I have, and the reason why I bring up this administration, is because if you care about fraud and you care about consistency, it shouldn't matter what the color of somebody's skin is. And then in this example,
you're the only person that's doing that in this conversation.
Okay, well, you brought up Somalians as if they're the ones that you're the ones who brought them up. When the ringleader, if you did your homework on this,
Andy Bach, I know it. Yes.
Okay, so
I know my homework.
Is she Somalian?
No, and let me explain what happens. You have these people that know how to game the system, that go to these communities that they know are insular and unlikely to actually go outside and report on crimes, and in fact, they massively benefit. So yes, you have domestic people in this country that do this. This is the same is true with NGOs and corruption that occurs with them all the time. For example, we know that Catholic charities and Lutheran charities, etc., are taking money, going to places like the Darien Gap and telling a bunch of illegals that are economic migrants the correct things that they need to say in order to get asylum. So yes, I am well aware that there are people, and it is overwhelmingly people that are involved in the Democratic Party that actually are involved in scamming this system and making sure that these monies are going to these communities. And in return, what we see overwhelmingly is so many of these places in turn kick money back in the form of donations to Democratic Party. In fact, you say that even if it doesn't rise to the level of criminality, you see this with Ellison and you see this with Tim Walz. I mentioned Tim Walz. That's a white man. It is true that there is a significant problem in the Somalian community. There's problems outside the front. But
you would agree that Republicans and Democrats commit fraud. It's a problem throughout. Okay, it's a problem throughout the country. I don't focus on the party. I focus on what I would call consistency. And going back to Nick Shirley, because that's what started this conversation, Nick Shirley has zero credibility. He's not a journalist. He is a grifter.
But okay, so if that's the case, why haven't journalists been covering this story? If we're show me. Last year, there was local affiliates that were there from dating back to 5 or 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden and his administration and his DOJ openly, and by the way, there's still open investigations going on now. I don't know if you were aware of that, but Joe Biden's administration, there were 90 arrests. There are people in jail right now. They took dozens of business licenses away, and under Joe Biden's DOJ, there are people in jail right now. Now, I'm not saying that more investigations shouldn't happen. I'm not saying that everything should just stop. All I'm simply saying is the Biden administration under Garland in 2022 opened up these investigations into fraud in Minnesota, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. And all I'm simply saying is both the left and the right commit fraud. I don't believe that if you support Donald Trump, and you happen to be white and you support Donald Trump, that your sentence should be commuted and you shouldn't have to pay back restitution. I want consistency. And Rob, the reason why I brought that up is a lot of the people, I'm not saying you, but a lot of the people that are attacking these Somalians 24/7, and they're talking about all this fraud and it's all Tim Walz's fault, they're not even aware of this, of the pardons and the sentences that Donald Trump commuted. So my thing is, if you're going to complain about Somalians in Minnesota, then you should probably know what Donald Trump did as far as all the commuted sentences and the pardons and the billions of dollars that they don't have to pay back in restitution. I want consistency, which I think is a very fair opinion. I've never said that there's not fraud going on in these daycare centers. By the way, I've never said that. I'm sure there is. There's fraud going on everywhere. It's a problem.
fine, investigate it. If Kash Patel wants to investigate it, then go ahead and do that and let the chips fall where they may.
Okay. So given if we apply the same standard to you that you're asking to apply, and you're saying it's not whataboutism, which is if you're going to hyper focus on potential fraud in these Somalian areas, then you should also be aware, because you're talking about that, clearly you're concerned about fraud, about the pardons of people that committed fraud during the Trump administration. Do you know about
and Biden?
Biden. Who?
And Biden. I can stop you right there. I've been very consistent on pardons. I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat.
Did Biden pardon anybody that committed fraud?
Absolutely he did. And I think that's just as wrong. You're missing the point that I'm trying to make. The people that seem to be the loudest when it comes to this fraud are Trump supporters. What I want them to say is what I'm saying. Okay, what I want them to say, it's not odd, by the way, it's very typical, but what I want them to say is
Democrats
what I'm saying,
don't care about fraud?
It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. We shouldn't be committing
No. Just to be clear, you said it's Republicans that complain about fraud more.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said in this specific case of the Somalians and the Nick Shirley story, most of the people that are the loudest about this story are MAGA Republicans and grifters like Nick Sortor. Hold on. Grifters like Nick Sortor.
Shirley.
Nick Sortor's another one.
Oh, okay.
Let me tell you what Nick Sortor, I know Nick, okay? The guy you want to talk about pathetic. On New Year's Eve, the guy is outside this learning center trying to get video.
Good.
Shirley is selling sweatshirts, grifting off of this thing, okay? He won't do any interviews with anybody on the left or middle ground. He's only done the bullshit PBD podcast and other podcasts that won't question him at all. He's dumb as a doornail, and I have the video to prove that. He's a very stupid kid, okay? He's very dumb. He thinks that, CNN asked him, he thinks that all these places shouldn't be locked and they should be open with reception. He knows nothing about daycare centers. He thinks anybody could just walk in there with cameras. That's not how these daycare centers work. It's private property. You can't do that.
I mean,
wouldn't do that.
A real journalist did almost nothing. That's the truth. And what happens is, if we saw this sort of investigative journalist from like the New York Times or CNN, when it came into like a business owned by Don Jr., you would applaud it. And it would be massively applauded. Instead, the focus from the mainstream media has been overwhelmingly, instead of investigating this, it's been overwhelmingly in criticizing Nick Shirley.